Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of Debunking Fitness with Kay. I realized that I should probably update my background for those who are watching the YouTube channel to have one that's more catered towards the podcast. I just realized that just now, so that's fine. Anyway, for those who are new here, in this podcast, we talk about common fitness myths that exist in the world today or nutrition myths. We talk about how they came to be, why they are, and why they're not true, and where the truth actually lies within them. So that's a little brief overview. And then I always end every single episode with a story of something paranormal, because I'm a big paranormal fan. I love the idea of ghosts and afterlife and whatever, all that interesting stuff. So I always do that at the very end. So if you want to hear something fun and paranormal, stick around to the very end. But my name is Kirsten. I am an online health and fitness coach. I work with clients on their nutrition goals and their fitness goals and help them to get the results that they've been looking for forever. And so I created a company called Performance by K right up here. And that is my umbrella of my company. That's what I do. I'm Kay. Anyway, I started this company because I have always been passionate about health and fitness, ever since I was a young teenage girl. Always into it, always wanting to learn about the body, so much so that I went to college for it. I got a degree in exercise science and perform or currently practice as an athletic therapist, along with being a personal trainer and a nutrition coach. So I do a little bit of everything. And I just love helping people hit their goals. And I love seeing people be successful and helping them like empower themselves, feel like they can do anything and that they are not stuck in their skin and stuck with their bodies and the choices that may have led them to their, if not choices, just like their body just being the way they are. Sometimes there's a lot of genetic factors and hormonal factors and conditions that can lead to where you are today, which may not be a place of total happiness and total contentment. So that's what I'm here for. Anyway, so on this podcast, I talk about all things that could be in the world that are misinformation. It's like my number one pet peeve is hearing misinformation and hearing somebody say, well, I thought this, or reading some comment that's like, well, I decided to do this and it's not working. And it's just a lot of stuff based in misinformation and losing weight and going through a body recomposition. It's actually so much simpler than you think. So that's kind of what we're talking about. So today's topic, as you can tell by the title, is do carbs really make me fat? Do carbs make you fat? There's a big myth out there that if you eat carbs, it's going to make you fat. Eat carbs, it's going to give you diabetes, whatever, which is not true. Carbs are absolutely important. So I actually see this all the time. And that's basically where a lot of fad diets come from, is that carbs are the enemy. Carbs have always been the enemy. Carbs will forever be the enemy, which is so not true. And the reason why it's not true is because carbs are like the building block to how our bodies function. And we can get it all into the science of that if you want to, but and maybe I'll touch on it in a little bit. But carbs are your main energy source. That's what your body uses first to do all of the systems that it needs to do. And yes, technically you can live without carbs, but like not effectively, not efficiently, and not sustainably. A lot of the times with fad diets, specifically like the keto diet's one of those. The carnivore diet is also another one of those. But they villainize carbs so much so that if you eat something that has high carbs, you feel bad about yourself. If you eat something with high carbs, all of a sudden your diet's ruined, which is just not true. And carbs should never be the villain. But I was going somewhere with that and I completely lost my train of thought. But basically, those fad diets, they'll tell you that carbs are the enemy. and that if you cut them out, then you'll be successful. You lose all your weight. But the thing is that a carnivore diet and a keto diet are not life habits. They're not life diets. They don't fit well within society as we know it. So eventually you will stop eating that diet. Eventually you will start eating carbs again because they're everywhere. They're the basis of everything. Fruits, all carbs. Vegetables, they have protein in it, but they're carbs. Most everything, the grains, breads, whatever, cakes, cookies, treats, carbs, all carbs. And so you will start eating them again. It's inevitable. And so whenever you do start eating them, a lot of the time, within those fad diets, you end up losing all the results you got with them, because they're not sustainable. So you need to figure out how to incorporate carbs and everything else into a sustainable diet so that you can do it for life and it doesn't feel like, oh, I can't have the cake, so guess I'm never having cake ever again in my whole life. I guarantee you that if I were to tell you as a nutrition coach, like, all right, you're doing the carnivore diet for the rest of your life, you're never eating cake again, you'd be like, excuse me, lady, no, that's not going to happen. I don't want to do that. You want to lose the weight, but you don't want to lose all of the fun things about life. And that's kind of where the balanced diet comes in. And that's where the problem with this myth comes in. So, carbs, how they actually work in the body. I'll give you a little brief overview, but carbs are the foundation of all of our energy systems. They run the ATP cycle, they run the Krebs cycle, all these different uptake cycles. They are the primary resource whenever we first start exercise, or if we first start doing something strenuous. It doesn't even have to be exercise. It could be helping somebody move. It could be walking up and down a huge flight of stairs. Whatever it is, they're your primary fuel source to keep you going through that. And then once you get through the all of your carb storage, which is all stored like in your liver and everything, well, it's all over the place in your body. You're full of carbs. Once you get through that, then you get into the fat oxidation, and then the fat loss phase, which is basically what the goal of those keto diets and the goal of the carnivore diet is, to help you be in ketosis. That's why it's called the keto diet. So the goal is to help you to sit in that phase so that you are burning the fat. But the thing is, as soon as you eat those carbs, your body's main job is to take that and store it, and to take it and use it. So it's always going to be the primary resource of energy, always. And so the goal here is to know how to eat them responsibly, so that you don't have to so you don't like eat too much and then it gets stored into glucose, and then once all your glucose storage is full, then it gets converted into fat and then stored in the body as fatty acids, right? So it doesn't go through that process. Anyway, so let's go a little bit into kind of like a little bit of the history side of it. So the rise of like low carb diets really started in like the 70s to 90s era. That's where like dieting culture really came into play, specifically like the American culture. Dieting really started ramping up during the 70s and 90s, and that's where a lot of these were created, specifically like the Atkins diet. And during this period, carbs were like demonized. They were labeled with like the primary cause of obesity, which is not true. And they were just like, they're bad. Everyone said bad. You don't eat carbs, bad. And so what really actually does lead to weight gain and to obesity is a calorie surplus, and a retention of calories. If you have like a slower metabolism, that sometimes it's not always accounted for when labeling out your caloric needs, whatever. So it's bottom line, what leads to weight gain is a calorie surplus. And that looks different for everybody based off of activity levels. You can have a calorie surplus whenever you're doing nothing. You can also have a calorie surplus whenever you're super active. So weight gain doesn't always necessarily need to be fat storage as well. Sometimes it's muscle gain, which is still weight gain. All comes to calorie surplus. And then also earlier in like the 20th century as well, so skewed diets are like in like the early 1900s. Fat was also very demonized as well. So like you have a lot of high carb, low fat options as well. And then I kind of switched to be low carb, high fat. So like it's all over the place, but truly 100% like there is a system on how to make it work, and it is not as hard as you think. They like really truly are so important. And it kind of like breaks my heart to see all these people who are like, cut out carbs and I'm not losing weight. You need them. Okay. You need them. And so the biggest misinformation that I see about carbs nowadays is that they will just make you gain weight. They will get you nowhere. They're empty, they're useless, and there's no point to have them in your diet. All you need is fat and protein, which is not true. They exist for a reason, and they actually are the biggest source of your diet, should be coming from carbs, truly. So let's talk a little bit about like diving into the science of weight gain, how that actually works and why you actually gain weight and not have it be there, and how it's not actually carbs that's the source of weight gain. So calories in, calories out. You've heard this probably a lot of times. So the weight gain comes from a calorie surplus, like we mentioned a little bit earlier. And a calorie surplus basically means that you are eating more calories than your body is using. And then calories out is what your body is using. And so the big fundamental is you want to, specifically weight loss, it comes from eating less calories than what your body is using. So your body is requiring more calories, but you're putting a little bit less in to your body to create that deficit, which a lot of people swear by the deficit. And something that I also see all the time is that people just push deficit, 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 and you keep doing deficit so much so that all of a sudden you're having 600 calories a day. All of a sudden you're not eating. You need to eat, okay? Cannot stress this enough. Your body uses energy. You eat to get energy. If you don't eat, you will not have energy, and a lot of negative consequences come from that. But carbs fuel your workouts, they fuel your brain function, they fuel your body movement, they fuel your day-to-day tasks, and they are so important. And they do not cause fat at all. Just the excess amount of calories does. And let's see. Oh, there's a big difference too between quality of carbs. So the carbohydrates that you might think of are like snacks, cookies, breads, all that kind of stuff. But they're also so much more in depth. And so you have a simple carb and a complex carb. And so a simple carb is that cookies, sweets, treats, cereals, whatever, anything that is super easy to digest, basically. It turns into straight energy. So it's like straight sugar, straight sugar cane sugar. And then you have your complex carbs, which are like your vegetables, your fruits, your grains, your like brown rice, your quinoa, all that different stuff that is still carbs. But they are a little bit more complex because they have a lot more nutrition and nutritional value within them, whereas simple carbs are just purely carbs that turn directly into sugar. Or directly into energy, and then you go through them really fast. And then all of a sudden you're hungry again because they don't sustain your body. So then you eat more. Anyway, and so let's see. I have an outline and it's all over the place. um, but the biggest foundational point there is you have good carbs that you can source from, and that is what you should be sourcing from. So carbs, totally great. They host a lot of nutritional value to them, a lot of like iron, folate, magnesium, all the different micronutrients within your diet come from complex carbs as well, which is incredibly important to have. And then those simple carbs will lead to excess eating because they don't fill up your body long term until you get hungrier faster. Yeah, so carbs are incredibly crucial for your diet, obviously, like we've talked about, and we have to find like a balance within that. So like I mentioned earlier, complex carbs will also help you with sustaining your energy over a long period of time. The more complex carbs you eat, the more energy you have throughout your day. So if you feel like you're burning out a lot of the time, that could be from lack of a solid basis of carbs. And they also will help you with increasing your performance. Whole wheat things are better than just regular enriched flour things. And then also another myth within this myth is that carbs make you bloated, which is not true. They just have water retention with the glycogen. What makes you bloated is things that your body cannot process. Most of the time it's lactose in people, which is why I am gluten-free and dairy-free, because I can't process that stuff. Anyway, and then a good way to incorporate carbs into your diet, if you're someone who's like, absolutely not, I've heard my whole life that carbs are bad for me and I cannot eat them. There's no way I could do that. The goal there is to start picking some nutrient dense carbs that are complex carbs that are good for you. That are not going to turn into straight energy. So that's going to be like your quinoa, your sweet potatoes, your oats, your vegetables, your fruits, that kind of stuff. And then portion your carbs as well based off your goals. So a big part of that is knowing your macros, knowing your goals, what you're going for specifically. And typically for my weight loss clients, I recommend about 45% of your diet going towards carbs, 45 to 50%, which is the like low end of how much your body should consume in carbohydrates. So if you're confused about, well, I don't even know how many carbs to have, take your total daily energy expenditure, which is basically the amount of calories that you need to maintain everything you've got going on in your life and your body. And then take about 45% of those calories, and those are your allotted calories to go towards carbs for the day. Yeah. Basically that's kind of like bottom line. Honestly, like carbs are not your enemy. Carbs are incredibly important. They fuel your body. They're your main source of energy. And cutting them out is only going to lead to an unsustainable result. Because I think at the end of the day, we are looking for long-term changes. You're not looking to lose 50 pounds to get a Hollywood role and then you're going to gain it all back afterwards, or whatever it may be. You're not doing that. You want to be able to feel good. You want to be able to look good. You want to be able to live your daily life easily. I think that's the bottom line of like why we lose weight and why we want to be healthy, is so that day-to-day life is easy. We are not all out there looking to be bikini model ready. We are not out there to be America's sexiest person. Okay. And if that is your goal, then perfect. Awesome. Do it. But most people, they just want to be able to live their life disease-free and to be around while they're 80, watch their grandkids grow up, be a part of their families, be present in their life, and be self-sustaining. I think one of the hardest things that life kind of throws at us in our old years is to slowly watch yourself be less capable of completing things that you've always been able to do, and having to ask for help to put on your pants, having to ask for help to um, carry things that you know you've been able to carry, because you just don't have the strength anymore. And I think that that is something that can be put off for longer with diet, with exercise, and your quality of life can be so much better for so much longer. And this life is the only thing that we have guaranteed for sure. It's the only thing that all of humanity can agree on, is that this life right now is real and guaranteed, and anything after that, you don't know what's going to happen. And so take care of your body while you have it. Live your life to the fullest while you have it. Eat the delicious foods, eat them in moderation, and eat for your body's capabilities and your body's goals, rather than emotionally what you feel like is going to help you in a short period of time. Um, eat for your future, eat for your family, eat for your children. Work out for those people too. Work out for yourself, work out for your family, work out for just your overall quality of life. I feel so passionate about this, and it just like it breaks my heart seeing people in their elderly years just like slowly their bodies are falling apart and their mentality is falling apart, because once upon a time they could do this stuff and now they can't, and they have to accept that, and it's only going to get worse. So take care of yourself now while you can. Be in charge of your health and wellness right now while you can, and always be in charge of it, so that you can be around for your loved ones and for yourself. So, okay, that's basically our carb talk right there. That is all I'm going to cover there. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I will answer them, I will look for them, and I will cover them in my next episode, or whenever they come through, I'll cover them in the very beginning of the next episode. But now is my favorite part, which is the paranormal part. And so I found this one on Reddit. I find all of them on Reddit. But this one is particularly interesting because it is a story about Japan. And I honestly think like Japanese paranormal stories are so unique and very spooky. Anyway, okay, so let's get started. So this one is called The White Witch. I have not changed anything. This is all exactly how it's written. So here we go. In the early 80s, I lived in Okinawa, Japan. My dad thought that seeing the world would be an adventure that would help my brother and I become better men, and I have to say, I think he was right. Being in the military showed me cultures many would never get to experience, and I am thankful for every experience that life gave to me, even the scary ones. While we lived in Japan, my father wanted us to have a fully immersive experience, so he chose to move us into a small Japanese neighborhood off base. We lived in a little house at the top of an enormous hill in a cul-de-sac that overlooked, I kid you not, part of a huge zoo, and on one side, a fairly large cemetery. Our particular house was set far above the monkey habitats, about a mile downhill. Between us and those habitats was nothing but thick Indiana Jones-style jungle. Jungle the neighborhood kids and I would tromp through endlessly, ignoring the local warnings about poisonous snakes and ancient untripped mines from World War II. We were the only American family living in that cul-de-sac, completely surrounded by Japanese families, and it was amazing. The kids loved us, and although we couldn't communicate through language very well, we understood each other perfectly. Well, most of the time. Opposite us was an older couple with a lush garden surrounding their property. The older woman wanted us to call her Mama-san, and she had us helping her garden whenever she could, coax us over with green tea and chocolate banana cookies. We loved her. She was so welcoming and generous, as was everyone else, actually. We lived in a wonderful neighborhood. The only drawback to Mama-san's home, however, was that she directly overlooked the cemetery, and that cemetery was unlike any cemetery I had ever seen before. Because Okinawa is an island, burials don't happen very often. Instead, above-ground crypts are built. Many of them built into the sides of hills that make up the island. The crypts are large, made of huge arcs of polished stone set over a large square of stone, which has a square insert cut into the middle of it for the coffin to be placed inside. Once inside, the square is inset with another piece of polished stone just inside, leaving a kind of shelf on the outside so offerings could be made to lost loved ones. Yen, food, flowers, incense are some of the offerings given. Below Mama San's house was a valley that swooped back up into another hill opposite her home. That valley and both hills were covered with these crypts and spider webbing. Up and down through the crypts were various stone step pathways that were old and badly maintained. It was quite a sight. One evening, Mama San asked me to come visit with her alone. She had something to show me, but it was only for me as the older brother. Intrigued and a bit proud, I agreed. She took me to the back of her garden and sat me on a thick wooden bench that was carved with scenes of fishermen and men with swords, and told me that she had a story to tell. Mama San then disappeared for a few minutes and soon returned with a tray that held hot green tea and sweet rice cakes. Sitting next to me, she smiled and commented on the colors of the evening sky as the sun began to lower. Mama San said she had seen me, my brother, and some other kids daring each other to follow a stairway path down into the cemetery. You have to understand, the path from our little home area down to the cemetery consisted of hundreds of steps, many broken or cracking, in and out of bushes, and at a steep incline. It would be dangerous for anyone, but the real test was seeing how long we could take walking through the crypts at night. Mama San wanted to explain why that was a bad idea. Many years ago, during the war, Americans were thought to be devils, monsters that would murder innocent citizens for no reason other than to kill. That fear was the product of wartime propaganda used to encourage young men to military service and farmers to fight alongside of them. But many didn't. Many ran with nowhere to go and nowhere to hide, and hundreds of Japanese citizens hurled themselves off of a cliffside rather than face the torture at the hands of their perceived enemy. I was terrified at hearing this. I had no idea that this had happened, and I was mortified and hit with such sadness that I started to cry. The sun was setting, and the sky went from pink and blue to a deep orange and red. Mama San reached out and held my hand, telling me not to worry, that this was in the past, and the past is something we must always remember so we never go back. She went on with her story. One young woman had followed through with this sacrifice with her two children, but she survived the fall. She was in a coma for months, and when she did regain consciousness, she was horrified to realize that she was not with her children. They had been buried somewhere in that cemetery below in an unmarked crypt that held many others. The woman would spend days and nights searching the cemetery, crying in pain, the torment of her loss unbearable, until the day she threw herself into the ocean to hopefully be reunited with her lost family. But they say she never found her children. Her active suicide doomed her to purgatory, and she would remain tortured for eternity. The sun had disappeared, the cemetery drowned in inky blackness, and the main path dotted with dim, broken lights, feebly illuminating small areas. Mama San continued, she still wanders the cemetery, she said, looking for her kids. You can hear her crying. And then she pointed down. I didn't want to, but I did. I looked. In the back of the cemetery, in the darkness, there was a white figure. At first, a bright white shimmer, moving slowly, kind of shaking. It moved from side to side like it was moving among the crypts, and you could actually hear the crying. Softly at first, but then low moans and whimpers of pain as it got closer and closer. I was terrified. I wanted to run, but Mama San held my hand and whispered that she wouldn't come up here. We were too far. But that is why we shouldn't go down there after dark. She said many don't know her story and call her the White Witch, which angers her. It's best to stay away, and it's best to pray for her. Mama San said that she comes out to see her often, hoping one day she will find her salvation. Needless to say, I never went down to that cemetery, not once. And I never sat back there with Mama San again, either. That was enough for me. I did, however, visit Suicide Hill. It's called Peace Prayer Park now, out of respect. I cried the whole time we were there. I prayed for all the souls and for forgiveness. So many Japanese citizens spoke to us, welcoming us, telling us stories, sharing with us, and I didn't feel worthy, and my love for the country and its people was overwhelming. I'll never forget my time there. I'd like to go back to see if she's still there, wandering the graves, looking for her children. Ooh, that one's chilling. That's so sad. I feel like a lot of the time, a lot of these stories come from tortured souls and people who like can't move on, essentially. But like I had no idea um about how during World War II, that's how the Japanese saw Americans. I definitely know that like different countries have their different versions of history. I think we all know that. And so I think it's so sad, but also probably maybe some truth to it. Everyone's truth is different. Um, that's like their experience and that they were just killing themselves so that they didn't have to be murdered by an American who didn't care about them, that they had like their own life in their own hands. That's really sad, actually, but incredibly fascinating. And I wonder, um, I hope that they were able to go back and see maybe that she did move on. Maybe somebody, some real paranormal, whatever people set her free. I don't know how it works. I really don't. I just think they're fascinating stories. And there definitely is some truth behind some people's ghost stories. I think things that go bump in the night come from something. They are not just figments of our imagination. And if they are, then it's kind of crazy how over centuries and centuries in different cultures of humanity, everyone has this a similar story. So very fascinating. But I guess that's kind of how life works. You reuse the same stories over and over again. I learned that in like English class in high school, but I don't know. Japanese stories are creepy though for sure. And I would love to visit Japan and go ghost hunting there or something. I've never been ghost hunting, but I would like to. I'd be curious. And maybe one day I'll have my own paranormal experience to share on here and have a whole story. But until then, I do not. But anyway, thank you guys for being a part of this episode. Thank you for listening. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you were moved by the story, whatever it may be. And I will see you guys on next week's episode. Thank you so much. Have a good one.